Hello, this is Jeanette Schliga with VGA, and up next to celebrate our virtual birthday party for VGA is the archive lady, Melissa Barker. Melissa, thank you so much for being here today. The presentation Melissa is going to share is Scrapbooks, a genealogist goldmine. Melissa, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeanette. And I'm going to do this supposedly in 30 minutes. And so we will see. So we're going to talk about scrapbooks. Anybody that knows me knows I absolutely love scrapbooks. They're one of my favorite genealogical resources. I love to research in them, and I also love to process them in the archives. I am an archivist. I work at the Houston County, Tennessee Archives and Museum. I've been doing that for 10 years. I've been a genealogist for 32 years. So scrapbooks are just phenomenal resources. No two scrapbooks are alike, and that's because they're put together by individuals. So each and every scrapbook is going to be different. The types of scrapbooks I'm going to try to cover in this 30 minutes are newspaper clipping scrapbooks, diary and artifact scrapbooks, war scrapbooks, family history scrapbooks, baby books. Did you know that baby books are a type of scrapbook? Organizational and club scrapbooks, whimsical scrapbooks, those are out there too, and specialty or one subject scrapbooks. So we've got to hurry. First and foremost, a lot of the scrapbooks that you're going to find, one of the more popular ones are newspaper clipping scrapbooks. These is where people clipped out things out of the newspaper, put them in scrapbooks, and hopefully they were saved. So why is this important for genealogists when we can access newspapers on microfilm and even online? Well, have you ever tried to find a particular issue of a newspaper where you know your ancestor's obituary should be, and to find on the microfilm reel that is missing because it wasn't saved, it wasn't microfilmed, it wasn't digitized? Maybe someone locally in that area actually clipped out the obituary, put it in their scrapbook. So that's why we need to do that. Here, I'm going to share lots of visuals today. This is a newspaper scrapbook. This is actually a newspaper with news clippings. So there's something about Nixon, something about Ford. So you might find those kind of scrapbooks. Here's some more of that type of thing. But here are some local clippings out of a local newspaper. These are like those what I call gossip columns or community columns. Those would be under, those are fantastic to find places to find your ancestors. This is from Mrs. J.A. Richardson's scrapbook from the 1940s. So the next type of scrapbook are diary or artifact scrapbooks. These are popular and some of the most interesting to me. And these are usually have handwritten journaling in them, or notes in them, or explanations of what's in the scrapbook in them. So it even adds more. And this is where you're going to find a lot of artifacts and ephemera. If you don't know what ephemera are documents that should not have survived. They were produced at a particular moment in time to be used for a particular purpose, and normally they would have been thrown away, but they have been saved and found in archives. So this is my absolute favorite scrapbook. We have it in our Houston County Archives and Museum. It's Evelyn Ellis's scrapbook. It was found up in a closet at an estate auction. One of my friends that attended the auction found the scrapbook up in a closet, took it to the family and wanted to purchase it. The family said, nope, we're going to donate it to the archives. And so as you can see, it's in very bad condition, but Miss Evelyn Ellis kept everything and put it in her scrapbook. Here is a Baby Ruth candy bar wrapper. This candy bar wrapper is about 3 times bigger than the ones we have today. But the best thing that she did in her scrapbook is that she journaled. And so on this page, she wrote, always remember June 11th, 1938 at Beech Grove at the ice cream supper. So if this is your ancestor's scrapbook, what fantastic information you can find in this scrapbook that you can't find in any other record source. Here's another example of that scrapbook. She has a cigarette, and believe it or not, that cigarette is actually still pasted into that scrapbook. I don't know what they used for glue back then, but it was very sticky. So this is actually a Mexican cigarette, and she talks about who she gets the cigarette from. And then if you remember Beech's gum, she put the little packages of Beech's gum in her scrapbook. Here is a wonderful artifact that actually kind of touches for me. This is not my ancestor, but it actually helped me to see something from a time. This is an original ticket to the Grand Ole Opry. I live in Tennessee. I live about an hour and a half due west of Nashville, where the Grand Ole Opry is. This ticket is from April the 1st, 1939. And the reason why it affects me is because my husband's grandmother on his father's side and my husband's grandfather on his mother's side, before they married their spouses, got together and went to the Grand Ole Opry and tried out My husband's grandfather played the banjo and my husband's grandmother played the guitar. I actually have her guitar that she tried out for the Grand Ole Opry. They didn't make it, but that story, I can take a copy of this out of this scrapbook and add it to their story as something that happened because they tried out about this time frame. War scrapbooks. You're going to find scrapbooks and archives that that were done during the war. Now, whether that was done by family members on the home front, there are also some scrapbooks that were done by military people during the war. So you may find both. Here's an example. This is the Houston County Historical Society's World War II scrapbook from the 1940s. We have this in our archives. They would put newspaper clippings in there, mementos, especially from the home front of what was going on in the home front. It will help to tell the story for your ancestors of what they were going through. And so you never know what you're going to find in a war scrapbook. This is the scrapbook from Mrs. J. Richardson from the 1940s. She put newspaper clippings in there about those that were off at war. And so if you're looking for your ancestors who was in the military, who was part of the war effort, either at home or they served, war scrapbooks are a great place to find that. Here's some other great interesting things where she actually visited Camp Wheeler. She pasted in her visitor's ticket and all kinds of wonderful documents. These are things that normally probably would have been thrown away. We call that ephemera, but she pasted it in her scrapbook. If you have, this is not your ancestor's scrapbook, but you have an ancestor that was at Camp Wheeler, then this may be something you would want to document. Family history scrapbooks. These are absolutely fantastic to get a hold of. They could contain actual original vital records pasted into the scrapbook. I've actually seen that. And so if you're looking for vital records that you can't find at the vital records office, you may find it pasted in a scrapbook somewhere. So these are usually put together by family members, with much care and thought about how they put it together. So pay attention to the order of how that scrapbook's put together. Maybe it's chronological, maybe they put it together in a certain way, and that's something we need to pay attention to. This particular scrapbook is the Brigham family scrapbook. And the newspaper clippings, which is all the scrapbook is made of, dates from the 1920s and 1930s. But as an archivist, this particular scrapbook gives me great pains. I don't know if you can tell, but the Brigham family actually owned a local mercantile, and they used a cash journal to make their scrapbook out of. And so underneath these newspaper clippings are records for those who shopped at their mercantile. These are their cash journal records. So the cash journal records underneath the clippings date to 1890s. The newspaper clippings they pasted in there date from the 1920s to 1930s. Now I understand that back then they would use anything and everything for paper, but I sure wish that they had not put these clippings over this particular journal. You may find things like original Western Unions. This particular Western Union says mother passed away Sunday evening, funeral will be Tuesday. So sad, but it's an original record that was actually sent, and it's in Miss Richardson's scrapbook. Baby books. Remember I said baby books are a type of scrapbooks. If you think about what are in baby books, they are a type of scrapbooks. And so they can include written information about the baby's birth, all the firsts that the babies did, maybe even a lock of hair and photographs. This is actually a baby book that was at an auction. And Mr. Don Howell of the West Kentucky Genealogical Facebook page, if you've not ever visited his page, he has spent his life recovering photographs, documents, and scrapbooks, diaries, things like that. And he's been offering them to the public. And so he has a Facebook page. Maybe go check it out. So things like the birth announcement that is in there, or maybe the little card that was on the bassinet at the hospital. So, and if you're looking for birth records, what a great way to find this information, especially if there's not an actual birth certificate available. I actually have my husband's baby book, my daughter's baby book, and they are filled with fantastic information, photographs, documents, and things like that. Organizational scrapbooks. These are actually fantastic. They actually tell the history of a local organization, but they could include your ancestors. And so these could be civic organizations. These could be professional organizations, clubs like the Garden Club or things like that. and you can find your ancestors. These two albums actually belong to Miss Lola Knight. Miss Lola Knight was a local school teacher here for many years. We received a collection of her records from family members. And so she had these two scrapbooks, and they're two different scrapbooks kind of along the same subject line. Now, please don't pay attention to these scrapbooks are in those awful magnetic albums that archivists love to hate, but that's what she used. So this first scrapbook is a retired teacher's scrapbook from 1973. The retired teachers here locally would meet once a month. They would have events. They would get together for reunions. And so as you see, there's photographs. We love photographs, and they could be found in these scrapbooks. She clipped things out of the newspaper. She had all kinds of stuff in these retired teacher scrapbooks. And so a treasure trove for not only local history, but for genealogists. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. There we go. The next scrapbook, this is also from that retired teacher scrapbook. As you can see, more photographs and more information. And all these people you see here are someone's ancestor. And so that's why I like to show people these scrapbooks to see exactly what you can find in them. So the next scrapbook that she had is interesting. It's the scrapbook itself, the magnetic scrapbook. It actually dates from the 1960s, 1970s. However, she used the scrapbook to paste in there pictures and photographs and information from the 1920s and the 1930s from when she was a school teacher at the various little one-room schoolhouses we had here. And so as you can see, these are all photographs of the students that she taught. Unfortunately, when you looked on the back of these photographs, there were no names, but we have the photographs. I can tell you that since we received these scrapbooks, we have removed everything out of them because of the detrimental nature of these kinds of scrapbooks. Here's the Golden Agers scrapbook. Like I said, talking about organizations, volunteer organizations, we had what is called the Golden Agers. They were part of the Erin United Methodist Church, and this scrapbook is actually from 1990. Again, they included their events, their outings, newspaper clippings, photographs. You may find that your ancestor was part of a local volunteer group, a civic group. And so look for those scrapbooks to find your ancestors listed in there. So whimsical scrapbooks. These are also a different kind of scrapbook. Sports teams, movie stars. A lot of times people would collect movie star photographs or newspaper clippings, and even paper dolls. If any of you remember playing with paper dolls, I actually do. And they used to make scrapbooks of those. And so while these are not actually going to show maybe your ancestors, they're important for you for social history to help you out to understand that maybe your ancestors were into sports teams or movie stars or paper dolls, and you can see what they look like from the time that your ancestors lived. So here is the EK and Teddy Rushing sports scrapbook from the 1950s. They did newspaper clippings and put them in here to document a lot of their favorite sports teams. And local sports teams. You may find that there is a scrapbook for local basketball teams, football teams. And if you have an ancestor that played in those sports, you may find them in that scrapbook. There are specialty or one subject scrapbooks. There are people out there that made scrapbooks for a particular subject. I have found that there are literally scrapbooks out there for everything. And you're going to see a pretty interesting example of that. So they would collect newspaper clippings, documents, ephemera, and other items about one event that was local or about in their family or a subject, and then they will create a scrapbook. So this example for me was kind of creepy when I found it. We received all of our local historical society's records that they had been keeping since the 1980s when we opened our archives in 2010. And so as we went through the many boxes, we found several scrapbooks. One of the scrapbooks that we found was named Crime of the Century. And I mean, it even looks kind of creepy with how they even put it on there. It looks like a serial killer put that on there. But it's from 1932. And it is actually a scrapbook filled with newspaper items about the Charles Lindenberg Jr. baby kidnapping. Now, who makes a scrapbook of that? But they did from 1932. This scrapbook has many pages in it. They must have clipped out everything out of the newspaper and put it in the scrapbook. Not necessarily something that you or I maybe would be interested in to look at as far as for our genealogy research, but it is something that's out there. And like I said, it kind of creeps me out a little bit, but it is something we have in our archives. They really took everything they could find in the newspaper and put it in the scrapbook. Unfortunately, we do not know who did this scrapbook. And so we have it in our archives, and it is something of quite of a curiosity. So scrapbooks online. I am an archivist, like I said, and I'm always, if anyone has watched any of my presentations, I'm always preaching that it's not all online. You have to visit archives or contact them, work with them, because majority of our genealogical records are still sitting in archives on shelves, in boxes, not digitized, not microfilmed. However, every single day there are more and more records coming online, and believe it or not, that one of the silver linings of COVID, if there are any silver linings, is the fact that as when our archives were closed, our archivists were either at the archives closed with their doors shut working, or they were sent home with work to do, which means during the last 2.5 to 3 years, all of our archivists have been working. They've been indexing, they've been doing finding aids, they've been digitizing records. And you're going to find that a lot of this stuff is going to start to come online, which is fantastic for us. And so, unfortunately, there's not a lot of places that have fully digitized scrapbooks, but there are a few. One of those places is North Carolina Digital Heritage Center. When you go there, I just did a search, and there may be even more now because it's been a while since I've did this for this presentation. There were 527 individually digitized scrapbooks on their website. 527, and they're fully digitized. I'd go there, look to see if you find something for your ancestor. The University of North Carolina at Greensboro, they have 236 different scrapbooks available on their website, fully digitized. The Library of Congress has many fully digitized scrapbooks, and they have one there for Lewis Carroll, who is the author of Alice in Wonderland. So go to these archives websites. Now, I don't know what it is about archivists, but when they do their websites, they make it very difficult for genealogists to find anything. And I'm an archivist, and I can say that. So you have to dig, you have to click, you have to peel it like an onion to find what you're looking for. But a lot of our archives website have indexes, they have finding aids, they have digitized records. And like I said, they're coming, more and more is coming online every day. So not every archive or repository has scrapbooks in their collections, but how are you going to find scrapbooks? Where are they going to be located in an archive? And I'm very, very thankful to Eleanor Briscoe earlier this morning, who talked about finding aids. And so you need to first locate the archives where your ancestors lived. One of the things that I do when I'm researching an area where my ancestors lived is I document every single archive. Now, does that mean that that place has the word archive in their name or has the word archive on their building? No, it's wherever records are being stored, maybe not necessarily preserved, but preserved. Wherever the records are located is an archive. And so you need to find out where are the records. Contact the archive by phone or email, ask if they have any scrapbooks in their collections. Now, I get asked all the time, I can't go to where my ancestors lived. I can't do research. So what do? I live in Tennessee. My ancestors are from West Virginia, Virginia, Ohio, Maryland, Pennsylvania. I've been researching my ancestors for 32 years, and for the most part, I've been doing it all from Tennessee. You need to know how to work the internet. You need to know how to use email and phone and even contacting them through their social media pages. Archives are there ready and willing to help you. It is going to take more time than if you were to just travel there. But I've been extremely successful doing my own genealogy research from Tennessee by using all of the methods available to me. And yes, I've even been known to write actual letters. I still do it today. Anyway, I can get a hold of these archives to get them to help me. So most of your scrapbooks that you're going to be looking for are going to be found in manuscript collections. Now, like I said, Eleanor Briscoe did her presentation this morning on finding aids. A finding aid is a document that an archivist produces while they are processing a manuscript collection. It tells you box by box, folder by folder, what is in that collection. And so when you look at the finding aid, you're going to find scrapbooks listed in that finding aid. Now, archivists do one of two things. There is a standard for when you receive a manuscript collection. Now, people say, what is a manuscript collection? Here's how I describe a manuscript collection to the layperson. Think about all the genealogical records that you have. You've got census records, you have scrapbooks, you have diaries, you have old correspondence, letters, you have grandma's quilt, you've got the family Bible. Take all of those materials, put them in boxes, take those boxes down to your car, throw them in the trunk, drive down to the local archive and donate it. That is a manuscript collection. So that tells you right there that literally anything can be in these records collections, including scrapbooks. So you're going to find these listed in the finding aid. Now, if you're doing research in Canada or in Europe, these collections are going to be called FONDS collections, F-O-N-D-S. That's how they're referred to usually in Canada and Europe. In the United States, we pretty much stick to manuscript collections, or we may see it listed as special collections. If they have scrapbooks in their collections, they're either going to be in the manuscript collections, or I have actually seen some archivists take all of the scrapbooks that they have in all of their collections, cull them all together and put them in one collection. That is not the standard in archival practice, but I have seen archivists do that. And so you may have to ask them, where are your scrapbooks? If they have scrapbooks in their collections, most likely they will not be able to send you copies of it if it's not already digitized. However, you need to request that they digitize it. Many times, and a lot of times archives will charge a fee. And if you pay the fee, what will happen is they'll digitize it for you, but then they will upload those digital images to their website, to wherever it is that they have their digital records. And so you may be paying the cost, but you're paying it forward as well because you're helping others to be able to see it. So if you show an interest in it, a lot of times archivists will actually bring that document, that scrapbook, to the top of the list to be digitized. Preserving your scrapbooks. One thing that I tell genealogists when they're preserving their own scrapbooks is to just make sure that you keep them in a cool, dark, and dry place, because paper deteriorates very, very quickly. And so if you want to know more about preserving records, please email me. So time capsules are, scrapbooks are a time capsule. They truly are. If you've ever had a scrapbook, opened a scrapbook, that takes you right back to when it was produced. So if you don't have any scrapbooks, or you can't find any scrapbooks for your ancestors, look at the scrapbooks of the neighbors, those that lived in the community. They may very well have clipped out something out of the newspaper that mentions your ancestors. So don't be discouraged if you can't find any for your ancestors. Look at any of those scrapbooks that are in those archives in the area where your ancestors lived. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Please visit my blog at Genealogist in the Archives. You can find me on Facebook at The Archive Lady. Just find that and like my page. And here's my email address. Please email me with any questions about researching an archive, scrapbooks, records preservation. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jeanette.